Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today it's a reaction to fixing PvP and looking at cargo from Oddjob Entertainment. His video did criminally low on the views, so just make sure you guys give him a subscription, thumbs up, all that jazz. Yeah, throw him some support. This video, after having seen it, it went through a lot more effort than most, and it's really interesting. Yeah, I think it deserves better. So yeah, just throw him some support. Appreciate the video. It's really interesting. It's really good. Definitely stimulated me since I managed to stretch this thing to an hour. But yeah, it's good. Keep in mind too, I did this one live on stream, so if there's missing context or if it sounds like I'm talking to myself, it's me reading the Twitch chat. I'm going to work on the layout. I know it's hard to read it too, so bear with me for that. But all good. Let's get into it. All right, here we go. So again, this is Oddjob Entertainment fixing PvP and looking at cargo. I'm super interested in this because PvP and cargo, I think, are the most important aspects of this game to realize its potential. It ties into the economy. And I always describe in my React videos as cargo hauling being the lifeblood of this game. So I'm really looking forward to this. Not a popular YouTuber yet, but I hear really good things about this video.
PvP has a major problem in Star Citizen. That problem is, it's not happening. I know this because I am part of the problem. I'll dabble in Arena Commander where the stakes are extremely low, but due to the apparent gap in skill between myself and dedicated PvP players, I actively avoid it in the persistent universe. For PvP to flourish in Star Citizen, the game needs mechanisms that will bring me into the line of fire of PvP players. Right now, those mechanisms don't really exist. We can see some fledgling attempts at this in the form of missions that exist already in the game. Things like In the Wake of Disaster and ECN network intrusion missions. The problem with these, though, is that players like me, who likely comprise the vast majority of players, can still just ignore them. This video topic has the potential to trigger a lot of people. It's great for engagement, so by all means, say what you want in the comments below. But the reality is,
people don't realize this about YouTube. If you dislike a video on YouTube, okay, or if you like a video on YouTube, you comment on it that you're really mad about it or whatever, just clicking anything on the YouTube video supports the guy, by the way. So like, if you dislike videos, great, you're helping the guy. Keep that in mind.
Is the passive way we have been playing the game has never been the intended route for Star Citizen. You're not supposed to be able to avoid players entirely. That's inherent in an MMO. If you
a spicy subject right now, given the Xenothote drama.
Go through the literal years of material that CIG has put out about the eventual persistent universe, you'll find some consistent through lines. 1. You will run into, rely on, and oppose other players in the game. There is no fully PvE experience. You can reduce your exposure, but you cannot eliminate it entirely. 2. Even industry players are supposed to have some level of risk. Death of a Spaceman is for everybody, not just PvP players. So today I want to talk about things that CIG could do today to make PvP more common, bring it to players across the board, and therefore start getting critical information about the way the game is shaping up. If PvP was much more common in the PU, there would be a period of frustration, but as players learned how to fight each other, I believe that it would normalize at some point. So while these points may seem one-sided now, it brings the game more in line with its proposed vision, and I believe they'd be a net positive down the line. Right now, how much data is CIG really getting about how a cargo ship feels against a fighter? This is critical data to have if piracy is going to be more common. So, what can they do? First, has to do with how they implement cargo missions. These are supposed to come out with the upcoming 3.23.2 update.
Which is taking longer than we thought it would be to release, which happens to give me more time to release the video. Okay.
These will have players taking on cargo to transport it to different locations. We haven't really had an opportunity to try these out just yet, but we can look at the current state of the game and make some predictions about the issues that will probably pop up. First off, Star Citizen has struggled to differentiate between the different sized cargo ships. We do have box missions, and these definitely cater to small ships. In the mid to large tier cargo ships, though, there's little preventing you from doing the same activities in all of them. I can trade barrel just as easily in a C2 as I can in my Constellation.
Dude, it's a good point. Like, how do you... Is just bigger better every time? Or I guess the only thing differentiating these ships is not the cargo itself, besides the amount, but what the ship itself is capable of, which isn't an issue because you don't want to go in a smaller ship for faster speeds to do the trading quicker, because there's no incentive or reason to do that. So yeah, like, I guess it's eventually gonna come down to the piracy, right? Like, do you want to go in a ship that can take all this cargo but it has no armor? Yeah, you would do that now because piracy wouldn't be as frequent, both PvE piracy and PvP. But it's an interesting subject. Miro, thanks for the raid, brother. We're just watching.
Death waits for the slightest lapse in concentration.
There we go. God, my alerts are all working. But yeah, we're looking at fixing PvP and looking at cargo, which would be right up your alley, brother. So easy.
The problem with this is that we are not concentrating cargo trading into true routes. If your cargo traders are not being funneled along specific routes, then piracy is nigh impossible. We've seen this reflected on stream with Summit, who in spite of this has managed to make some content really entertaining, but by his own admission, it basically boils down to waiting for hours for players to come by and give him a chance to tuck into their ship. Compared to the vision we've been fed about piracy, this is a pretty sad presentation. The piracy that CAG has painted for us may look something like what follows, keeping in mind that this is just one possible scenario. You and your pirate crew wait along a major shipping lane with a Mantis's Quantum Snare. The rest of your crew is composed of a C2, or perhaps the Drake Ironclad and a couple Buccaneers. It takes a while, but you are able to snag a C2 out of its quantum travel from Crusader to Hurston. The C2 is not defenseless, however. It immediately starts lighting up your pirate crew, and it seems it even has a Gladius in tow for added defense. After a vicious fight, you're able to secure their surrender and you start transferring the cargo from their C2 into your Ironclad. You all need to work quickly, however. UEE law enforcement is not far behind. This is but one of many scenarios that should be possible under the larger umbrella of piracy, but we run into problems trying to make this happen in reality. The first is that if I'm in a C2 going from Crusader to Hurston, I can depart from Yella, Selen, Dabar, and the main planet. If we know the distances between each of Crusader's moons and Crusader, as well as the distances between those moons and Hurston, and finally knowing the distance between Crusader and Hurston, we can do some math to figure out the angular difference between all 4 possible routes from Hurston to the Crusader planetary system. Then, now that we know those angles, and knowing that the maximum intercept range of the RSI Mantis is currently 20 kilometers, we can determine the maximum distance from Hurston that enables the Mantis to cover at least 2 of these shipping lanes. If we use the lowest possible value, we should have the distance that allows a Mantis to capture any ship between Crusader and Hurston. This ends up being 68 kilometers approximately. I don't know about you, but this seems extremely disappointing. The ships have essentially arrived at that point, and this doesn't give much of a chance at all for any meaningful engagement to occur. Anything past 68 kilometers means you will only be monitoring one of the 4 possible routes between these 2 areas.
That's the problem, right? Is like, the game is too ambitious, where I think, Eve solves this problem with gates. Like, players have to converge while going to destinations all the time. In Star Citizen, it's nothing but free space. So, like, I always had an issue trying to figure out how they're going to get this stuff to work. And it's a miracle that players have even figured out how to do this at all reasonably. But the answer is you're going to have to be specifically on their route, or the act of piracy is going to have to happen at the destinations in which they're picking the cargo up or arriving and selling. Yeah, like, it's going to be, if you can interdict them along that route, great, sure. And eventually there will be routes that do accommodate for that. Like, but I think a lot of the piracy gameplay is going to be coming from outposts, selling locations, tucking, despite it being almost griefing in the eyes of CRG or whatever, right? Like they're trying to avoid it, especially with the hangar updates coming. But it's a super valid point. Like how, in what part of the cargo holder journey does CIG foresee them being at risk? Like, where's the piracy windows? It's a perfect point for you, Amiro, who just raided us, and all the mongrel guys spamming the mongrel emotes. But yeah, like it's just wonder where the game's gonna go with this for sure. Yeah, and the turret gameplay, Amiro, is just not strong enough for sure. Ideally, much like finding bunker bobs based on what bunker mission shopping disappears, you can track what cargo missions they're up to, wait until they disappear, and you know where to wait to intercept. Yeah. Yeah, like, the only thing I can think of is, like, maybe some long-range mechanic to catch them in Quantum, but you're not going to organically intercept these guys based off geometry with any sort of frequency. So I think the pirate experience is either going to rely on some sort of mechanic, like maybe you can hack people while they're going through Quantum or something along those lines, or maybe like send an Quantum interdiction torpedo or something, right? Like it's going to have to be something down the track that we haven't heard of. Otherwise, the piracy vulnerability windows for these guys are at the buy and sell stage. Yeah, like because it's just, the scope is so infinite with this game. I think the idea of interdiction is going to be extremely difficult. Or it also depends, like, will cargo hauling be dependent on going through gates and wormholes? You know? You can camp various OMs. Yeah, you can. G Prime, I appreciate the Prime.
The raw strength of youth may be spent, but his eyes hold the secrets of 100 campaigns.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you, G Prime.
Prime 31 just subscribed.
Yeah, I it's just gonna come down to it, right? Like, is interdiction and piracy going to be random fishing? Are you going to be able to try and pirate specific, you know, individuals and stuff like that? It's really complicated. And I hope that the future is gates, because there's nothing as good as an iconic gate camp. Like, I think gate camping is such a cool mechanic, hanging out with friends, doing the piracy, encouraging you to get escorts when you're going through gates and stuff. I love that idea. But it's a tough question. And Lucky was just showing in the video, you know, I don't think the math is going to add up for the pirates to be able to do this instead of intercepting people at the buy and sell stage. They also have the Halo gates in Stanton. Are they still going through with that, Dragon? Do we know, like, the asteroid Halo gates is what you're talking about, right? There's those as well. I don't know if I thought they might have abandoned it, but the Halo gate was, the idea was the system was surrounded by a Halo ring of asteroids, and then there's supposed to be these giant mega structures that act like gates for it. So and they look cool. They look so cool. Like, keep that in mind, yeah? They look so cool. I love, like, the Halo gates. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. I encourage you to Google it. Very cool.
Unless the route specific.
To be honest, it's always been weird to me that you can jump anywhere and somehow your ship dodges every asteroid there is. True.
Yeah, from Crusader to Hurston were especially popular. You can kiss goodbye to any dream of catching someone.
Look up the Halo gates, guys. They're so cool.
The distances are just too great. Now that we understand the problem, how do we fix it? Well, Ray's got.
Yeah, they really looked cool back in the day too. They were like mega structures to these gates, like very Eve-like. Like, I loved it. I thought it was so cool. But God, could you imagine the lag with that many asteroids?
I put out a video some time ago talking about the trade routes and relates it to the hub and spoke system we use today on Earth. I want to expand on this idea and adapt it to our discussion here. To start, your large freight movers like the Hull C, and at this point in the game, anything transporting more than 200 SCU of cargo should be relegated to transport between planetary systems. Taking a C2 down to a moon service is the equivalent of taking a cargo plane or shipping barge to your local farm. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Instead, you would expect to see these larger vessels going between distribution hubs with the cargo equivalent of all the farms in the region. Mapping this into Star Citizen, the largest ships we have in game currently should be making their trips between the planets or the orbital stations like Seraphim, Virginie, Port Tressler, and Everest Harbor.
Oh, so he's saying small cargo ships should be just doing it interplanetary, right? And then medium cargoes go from like moons to planets, and then the large cargo ships, planets to planets. That's interesting. Is that what he's saying? Have I understood this correctly? Yeah, good point. Not a bad point. I like the idea of this actually, because then it actually gives validity to some of these ships as well, if I've understood this correctly.
Mid-tier ships then handle the interplanetary system cargo. These are your ships moving up to 200 SCU, going from the orbital stations down to the planet proper and to its surrounding Lagrange points. Finally, your small cargo ships, anything less than 100 SCU for instance.
Well, to be inter-system? Yeah. So it's just like, I guess what ships would fit into what categories. And then the problem is too, is some of these cargo ships are being used to deliver vehicles and stuff too. So there's that. But yeah, for sure.
Are doing the deliveries of cargo to specific locations such as Tram and Myers. The same applies going in reverse as well. These small ships collect from the specific locations to take it to a collection point until it goes up the chain and across planetary spaces. This approach would do a couple things. One, the lower value pilots moving only a small portion of cargo would have much lower risk due to their volume and wide diversity of routes. The higher volume pilots flying a C2 had better have those turrets manned because they are flying much more value in cargo along much more predictable routes. Because their traffic is orbital station to orbital station or planet to planet.
And this is the problem with piracy, and in my opinion, the economy. It's like there's no such thing as predictable routes, because they haven't made like severely convincing economic incentive for popular routes. Like in the past, we had the Laranite Rush, which was a buy and sell locations that were very predictable. And what did that cause? That rippled out, and this is why I put such a high value on cargo hauling, guys, because when you have good cargo hauling, you have security demands, you have the criminal system saying like when players pirate, they get crime stat, or if they gank or they kill to get loot, aka the piracy, the cargo that they've destroyed off a caterpillar, they get into the crime system. Crime system becomes involved, which means players start playing the security role, the escort role. Bounty hunters start getting bounties on the boards because of that. Players also need the money, so they're wanting to do cargo hauling themselves, which creates PvP and contention, and that creates like relationships, people competing for the trade routes, and pirates getting to pirate. Like it just, when trading is good, and it also encourages player interaction, both good and bad, both good and bad, then it's like heaven, man. It suddenly starts feeling like the MMO it was always promised to be. But the problem is where, like, I think I watched on a Salty Mike stream one day. If you can mine the best rocks in Star Citizen anywhere on a moon, on any moon, what's the point? You can never find miners. It's the same with cargo hauling. If you can buy like cargo from different locations and stuff, then there's nobody to find. There's no, like, pirates can't pirate anything. None of the outposts are being contested by different trade organizations or businesses, whatever. So there's no bounties on the board because there's no criminals. So no one wants to play for security or anything like that. It just ripples bad and it ripples good. So it's just like if they made meta routes that were popular, high risk, high reward, they would get so much more player interaction than they do right now. Because at the moment, it genuinely feels like there's one location or two that arguably is very quiet, has a little bit of interaction in comparison to previous patches where there was so much interaction. Guys, I've seen so much more activity and like life in this MMO on 50 player servers of the past where the limitation was 50 than there is 100 nowadays. Yeah. And that was only because it was convincingly meta, meaning convincingly there was economic incentive to do specific routes. Like the jump town of old. Oh, I loved it the jump town of old. Correct me if I'm wrong. Aren't they changing quantum boosting so you can travel in any direction you want? Yeah, shenanigans, which is again another concern. Absolutely, yeah. If you can manually control your jumps now, then piracy is even further restricted into the buy and sell stages. The vulnerability windows are even more so confined to the buy and sell locations, which is a bad thing, right? Like you need, for interception of any kind, you need predictability, and if they take that away, we're in trouble for sure. Is it emergent gameplay I'm describing? Yes. There's nothing like getting insulted in Chinese through VoIP. I'm sure that happens all the time. God, I get that in Tarkov nowadays too. Do you still think that 90% of the ships you see flying will be NPCs filling up the server, like CIG suggested a while back? No. I think that people that are using the like 9-to-1 argument that the game's 90% AI, they're referring to like player cities where NPCs are doing yoga and stuff. I don't think they're referring to there's going to be 9 PvE ships to everyone and you're going to interact on that on a like minute by minute basis. I don't think that's going to be the case. Like you go to a station, you see a bunch of security ships there. Do I care about that? No. But like if they're talking about the grand scheme of things, I don't think so. Because that's like, it's like that in a lot of games. Like if you go in a Tarkov, for example, and Tarkov's a PvP game, is it not? But you go into a Tarkov lobby and it might have 8 players and 30 scav NPCs, right? Like, so like that's not foreign, and people like to use that as an excuse to say it's a PvE game. Some of the most brutal PvP games have plenty of NPCs. So they kind of killed bounties when they changed SPK because they used to catch most bounties on foot there. Only 20k jumps with cooldowns. Yep, but we have that now too, mate. So Amira, you would know more about this. What are you saying that you have more of? If you're still around.
Planet. Rather than monitoring an area of space just off of Hurston, now the pirates can monitor the shipping lane connecting the 2 planets. It's still a game of chance.
Maybe we'll have some kind of quantum
Does the Mantis activate their snare at the right time? But now it's significantly more likely to occur.
The last patch, Virpil and Pig's SPK Collection where 90% of interactions happen. I had 2 C2s and 2 A2s on an account, but never bought any since the pirate trader ratio was so high. Yeah, the only issue is, Ship Club, is like, I think that the problem is they have meta routes right now. Like, I do think they exist, but I don't think they're compelling enough to want more of the community to go into those mechanics, or sorry, locations that aren't already invested in those loops. Yeah, and I think Amiro, I think my point, Amiro, is that I'm not saying it doesn't exist, right? I'm just saying that it's not as popular as it's been in the past, and it's not the best way to make money, right? Like, and money isn't nearly as required as it was in the past. That's my point, right? But you're not wrong, and you have to give them credit for the Virpil and Pickers stuff. Like, that is working as intended, but I do think the economic incentive isn't as rewarding for the rest of the community in comparison to the other loops available. Like, because that was the thing about the Laranite Rush. It was so compelling of a location, but the problem is with pirate, like with salvaging, mining, missions that have since been released, stuff like that. It's like spread players further away from that even though that route is meta. Because that's the problem, is like, I think cargo, and here's the big one, Amiro. Here's the absolute core of my argument. And it's great that we get rated by a pirate streamer at the same time. This is perfect. But the big one for me, brother, is that if cargo hauling is the only loop where you have to put money up for risk to make money back, whereas mining, you are mining an infinite amount. There's no risk besides the time you spend. There's no upfront cost to invest or anything. There's no investing in any loop besides cargo hauling. I think cargo hauling should be the absolute meta and the most compelling. And I think that's the imbalance of the game right now. I think that's a heavy imbalance. Is loops that require upfront money, like hauling does, it should be significantly better than the other loops. Significantly more profitable. And that's the best thing. Like, I played the Jump Town Evolved that Dragon was describing. There was nothing more heart pounding in this game than going to Jump Town, going all in on all the money you had on the chance of maybe getting close to doubling it. It was the best thing. Like, I remember getting all my friends together back in the old Jump Town because the economy was far more important than it is now. Because the economy back then was far better. Amiro isn't a pirate. Oh, okay. He's a Care Bear security tester. Just make sure all the Care Bears have proper security. Is that true? But that's my point. I do think that they've imbalanced cargo hauling. Anyways, quickly, long range scanner saying that for 2 months and you play for 2 months. Yeah, Sescom. I think that's 100% what needs to happen. Welcome, by the way. Don't forget scavengers and salvagers in your cargo ecosystem. I claimed a bunch of abandoned C2s last patch. Yeah, for sure. The thing about Jump Town is you couldn't jump it to it. It was an unmarked location. Yeah. I think Dragon 2, like, man, I loved how important the economy was back then. Because you guys got to realize, and a lot of you won't know this unless you've played the game a long time. When Dragon's referring to the old Jump Town, back then, if you died, if your ship died, like if you crashed, whatever, you lost the components that you bought and put on your ship. So because your components were not persistent, there was a constant need for UEC. People needed the economy back then. They don't need it now. Now, your repair costs, your ship claims are so easy, you don't care about them. You buy a couple ships, you get some millions, you don't care about UEC after you've got the couple ships you want. And then the experience draws up really quickly. But back then, because your components were getting wiped, there was a massive need to constantly be putting ship parts into your ship to make them reach their actual potential, and which legitimized Jump Town back then. Money was everything back then. Money is nothing now. And that was what was so great about it. Like, God, if you had millions back then, you were rich as heck. You were so rich back then. Now you have to have $1 billion to be rich, right? So it's like inflation. Could cost more for mining heads and a decent sell value to not bring that to a pirate's radar. Yep. Remove the ability to send money to friends. I don't know about that. I think we just got to increase the cost of maintenance. Really, like the cost of living in Star Citizen needs to go sky high in comparison to what we have. Like ship claims, expensive. Yeah. Repair cost, expensive. Refueling, absolutely expensive. Paying off, paying off SPK, like getting your crime stat should cost a huge amount for the hacking chips. Like ship components should wipe on death or require insurance that costs a significant amount. Like ship component insurance should not be granted to us for free. And if you get that, if spending money, you know what it's like? It's like, I don't know economics, right? But a huge issue with economies when they go down is when people lose confidence in the market and they hold all their money. The problem is Star Citizen hasn't even given us things to spend our money on. So that's the problem, right? It's like UEC is cared so little. And that's like, if I had any job at CIG, if they offered me any job at CIG, I would want to work on the economy team. And I would start changing things so drastically. I'd go in there with a hammer and start knocking down these things. It's like, okay, ship claims are now 10x. Yeah? Refueling 10x. Repairing 5x. FPS kits maybe 2 times more than they are. Maybe 3 times more than they are. Your components only insured if you pay the insurance on those ship components. If you bought the ship in game, you have to buy ship insurance. If you bought the ship on the store, okay, you get the free insurance because you're paying for the game. But I would start knocking down some of these things. Maybe ship components doesn't work in non-high-sec systems. Yeah. The 90 job costs like 100k to refuel. Should be way more. If you're taking out the Titanic on a sea voyage, you better be taking it out for a reason. Quadruple it at a minimum, Dragon. The economy is nothing to what they're supposed to be. They'll supposedly be meaningful price increases based on supply and demand of the players. Yep. But what about broke players? Don't be broke. Don't be broke. You got to do something. Something in game. You know, whether it's PvE, maybe you can go the PvP bounty route, PvP criminal route. You got to do something. You got to participate in some sort of aspect of the game. For sure. But that's it. Like you got to lose. Like there has to be losing for there to be winning. You have to be able to be broke to want money. You know, like in the game. Like that's the problem though, Hyundai, is people are broke in Star Citizen and they don't care, or they have a ton of money and they don't care. But there's no necessity anywhere in between that. I lost 2 A2s and a C2s, both Scorps, a blue, iron, and a mantis with this patch. Even the F7A load iron, the final one day is gone. I care about UEC right now. My fighters are my main. The alt only has a medic Ursa right now too. Yep. Make the base ships not expensive to claim, but the rest jack it up. Yeah. I would also tweak scarcity. A level of components would be hard to find rep base. Yeah, danger. Completely agree. I completely agree.
Hopefully, it's likely enough that cargo players are
like you have to make this player base start consuming their vegetables. Yeah, like that's the best way to describe it. Is people have had the convenience of pulling out their credit cards instead of their playtime for too long. Start rewarding playtime over credit cards. And I'm not saying stop buying ships, everybody. I'm just saying things need to be worth something that can't be purchased on a credit card. And you know what that is? Refuel. That's repair. Ship component insurance. Armor sets in game. Weapons in game. Rare components. Stuff like that.
Actually
that you can't buy in the store.
To bring along fire support, as we've constantly been told to do. Now, I could be wrong, but it seems like all of this is possible with reputation and commodity limits. If all the individual locations, like Tram and Myers, sell less than 100 SCU total in all of their combined commodities, that would take all the larger vessels away from the moons. If transporting bulk goods requires reputation, you can prevent small ships from taking on the much more dangerous cargo between orbital stations. The stations would be selling cargo on the order of hundreds or thousands of SCU, but to gain access to these vast quantities would require reputation with the cargo guild to prove you're capable of making the delivery safely and in a timely manner. This restricts the massive cargo loads to only a few of the possible shipping lanes. I suppose that these ships could still take a more indirect route to avoid any snares, and maybe that's part of the hustle. Figuring out a safer route that takes more time but avoids trouble could be a consideration for the enterprising cargo trader.
And that's the thing too. I think a lot of the cargo players get a bad rep because it's like, if they want to do cargo hauling and it's lucrative and it's very like meta, then they can hire the escorts and stuff. And if you don't want to do the escort experience, you don't want to do the PvP stuff, you don't want to risk piracy, then go down a more safe casual route that's probably less affordable. Take the L in the long term to help you in the short term. My cat is being extremely naughty.
This runs the risk, however, of not making your deadlines and losing reputation as a result. Critically, with the advent of the cargo missions soon to drop in game, I hope we see unverified missions tied to them as well. And here I'm not talking about just trading illegitimate goods. Rather, just like with the ECN network intrusion mission, if a cargo trader accepts a high-value, high-risk cargo mission, there should be a chance of creating a piracy counterpart that leaks the predicted cargo route and enables pirates to intercept them. This is probably one of the most direct ways to get pirates doing pirate things, as well as getting cargo traders to travel with protection, as has been the described intention so many times. From the cargo trader's perspective, not much would change here. The major differences would be that, knowing the high risk of their cargo, they are much more inclined to have their turrets filled and an escort with them.
Ooh, cargo player accepts HRT mission. Cargo player enlists a fighter escort.
On the piracy side, however, when the cargo trader accepts their mission, it spawns an interception mission for the pirates. It has certain key details about the point of origination and the destination.
Okay.
And maybe they have a QT marker to place them along the predicted route of the cargo ship.
So he's saying that tie this into the mission system, is he? Or is he just talking about when players enlist cargoes? This is clever. Yo, I like this. And this could bridge the gap between players not being able to interdict people along random routes and not even having the intel of who's traveling along these routes and stuff. So this basically provides intel to gap the infinite scope that is an infinite universe, right? Like, cool. Yeah, even if it was like a trading board arcane or like, you know, something, some sort of audit, right? Like even nowadays there's systems that, you know, monitor ships that are going across and planes that are going across and stuff like that. So, you know, we don't have to pretend as if that tech doesn't already exist. There could be some bridging mechanic, but the key point of this is intel, right? Like the pirates need intel. And because the pirates are going to be more frequent to catch cargo haulers, the cargo haulers should also get a mechanic to supplement that, which is, you know, some easy to recruit enlist fighter escort. Because that's the thing. Like, there's people that play this game that are roaming around in Gladiuses, in, you know, F8s, Hornets, whatever, that would love to go on board and escort a cargo player, right? Like, it isn't being presented to them as an option. And if there was a mechanic that did that, you know, like an LFG mechanic that broadcasted, hey, this player's looking for escort, that'd be great. But it has to be obvious, has to be in your face, stuff like that.
Assuming they time it right, then they're able to pull the C2 out of QT as described previously. Their reward for the mission is reputation with some criminal entity and the cargo they just stole, assuming they are successful. If the cargo trader wins the skirmish, then they get a bonus to reputation and currency as a form of hazard pay. It should also probably be considered to give ships that were recently snared some kind of immunity to snares for a period of time after, but maybe it's not needed. It's probably best to just see how it goes, but we wouldn't want players getting snared 5 times on their route. Another possible consideration is changes to the quantum travel system. Quantum travel at the moment takes a straight linear path between any two locations. What if it did?
And here comes Shenanigans point.
Didn't. If we step back to the star system view, we see that there are 3 routes branching from any of the 4 planets in the system. Hurston serves as the center hub of our larger wheel diagram as it sits roughly in the middle of everything. If we simply alter the routes from their direct route to more of a spline shape, then we can make large sections of these routes between planets overlap. This makes a lot more sizable area where...
Yeah, I like this. Like, and why don't they do this? You know, call it safety. Say like, you know, a quantum drive has plotted routes that it, you know, talks to a shipping lane system or something, right? Like, why do we have the ability to go from here to here and the only demand is that it doesn't fly into the sun, right? Because it's like, yeah, like if you take away people's freedoms and put them across green lit shipping lanes, you know, by whatever the law system is in that system, then you could increase piracy and stuff like that, player interaction. Yeah, and call it slingshot, you know, like maybe, you know, like there's some science law that they could do for the reasoning of it. Like it's better to slingshot around the sun than it is to go through it and, you know, penetrate its gravity and stuff like that, and, you know, slows down the lane and stuff like that. Like maybe it is better to do it that way.
Piracy can occur between these planets. I also wonder if this would make quantum travel feel more varied as you watch your ship make wide, sweeping arcs through space. One elephant in the room is that my map diagram is based on the current static positions of the planets, but we have been told that in the future they should have realistic orbits that affect lane distance and travel times. I think the underpinning principles I'm describing here still apply to a more dynamic system, just that the relative distances and the overall shape may shift.
So he is saying, like, he's referring to these being shipping lanes, right? Like actual routes in which all the players are going to go to when they go to these locations.
And warp with time. A big inspiration for making this video is watching Salty Mike's coverage of clips where Summit was expressing some frustrations. At one point, Mike questions the utility of having a refinery be so remote to get the best deal on refinery costs.
Why is it all the way out there? What if they put it right in the middle of everything? What if you put that station right in the middle of everything, and all of a sudden you have a little bit of a trade lane for prospectors and for moles and for miners, right? What if you did that? What if you added refining to salvage at these stations? You know what I mean? What if you created a situation where everybody wants to go to one place? Like, we keep doing these things where it's like, oh, we want player choice, right? But one of the player choices should be, do I take the risk or do I go to the simple place?
Odd job from the editing bay here. I wanted to add some clarity to why I'm talking about this clip from Salty Mike's original stream. There is a difference between a trade hub and a trade lane. A lane means that you have a linear path along which pirates can camp to find their quarry. A hub means that players are going to be approaching from all different sides. One of them requires that you have a team located at the location itself, and the other requires that you have your team placed along the route thereof. Mike is right to want places that bring people together and get players centrally located, but I think the way that he's thinking about it might be a little bit mistaken. If you have a refinery that's placed way out there, that creates a singular route that players have to take in order to get to that location. That creates your trade lane that players can then be pirated on. If you have
a B-roll, I think what he's referring to is the further away the location, the more predictable it is to intercept with interdiction. So he's saying it's good, is my understanding, if it's far away than it is being the hub being in the center of things. Yeah, but here's the thing though, piracy isn't restricted to intercepting along quantum routes. You can still intercept at sell stations and buying locations, right? So instead of hitting them in the middle of all these trade lanes, you should be able to hit them at either end, you know, and that's another way of doing it as well. And I think ultimately, I don't think they can pigeonhole piracy into just buy and sell locations. It should be, you know, even spread across the three, or some bridging mechanics. Absolutely, it's less risky. Yeah, so it's kind of like push and pull. When it's like, what do you want, right? Because you can't tick both boxes. If Salty Mike gets what he wants and he puts the hub in the middle of the system, then the idea of intercepting in quantum is going to be next to impossible, right? Because they're going to come from all different locations and meet here. So you're buffing, like Salty Mike was proposing, you're buffing the idea of doing piracy at the cell location, the hub in the middle of the system, but you're limiting it to that. Yeah, like you're ruling out intercepting with interdiction along these routes. Yeah, it becomes far more harder. But if the hub is far away, outside the system almost, kind of like it is, then you're increasing the chances of people being able to intercept along the trade lane. But side consequence to that is it's in the middle of nowhere and you're so far away from the rest of the game. So it's a lot of eggs in one basket. And this is where Intel comes to play. Yeah. And that's why I liked his Intel idea the most, which is like where the mission system, and there's so many lore reasons, space reasons, MMO stuff they can do to just provide intel, because that's what the pirates need and the players need to create interaction. Yeah, like it all comes down to information, and actual economic incentive.
A refinery be centrally
Man,
located,
this video is
that
good.
creates a trade hub that is going to be overall safer from the lane perspective because you can approach from any number of a different direction. But if there is a large oppositional force at the station controlling the airspace, then you have a PvP event. I want to relate that to what we've been building here so far. If piracy depends on having a predictable area to find players in transit, then placing a refinery out by Microtech or out past it, which would be better, effectively provides that choke point. The problem is, CAG has yet to provide a real reason for the choke point to be a true benefit worth that time and risk and a feasible tactic to loitering pirates. But if the reward for refining there were higher and the means of getting there equally limited, then you create another opportunity for PvP to organically occur. Conversely, if your refinery is centrally located, then players can approach from all directions and be more relatively safe. The only way to control that kind of station would be to have a large oppositional force at the station itself. What CIG could do with this is put these rewards on a rotation. If I knew that a week from now I could get an extra 25% yield if I refine my ore at a specific location, I'd be more likely to hold onto it in my hangar and bring it out for a larger bulk job. Let's assume that the station in question doesn't accept more material for storage.
I think when he's getting down this route is he's looking deep into the future. Like our issue isn't step 10, 11, and 12. It's step 1 and 2, right? Like the biggest, most obvious issue with piracy and lack of player interaction along trade routes is lack of incentive to do trading, right? Like, are there reasons to trade right now? Yeah. Is piracy happening right now? Yeah. Are people trading? Yeah. But what are they trading to build towards? Why are they trading besides just for the fact of it? Why is trading not anywhere to scale given it requires investment where other loops don't? Why is it nowhere near to scale? It's things like that. So I think that the fact he's on step 10 and stuff, and I think they need a more focus on the beginnings of the issue.
Storage after reaching capacity, thereby preventing players from stockpiling there ahead of time.
Bro, Mez, I'm thinking about like whenever I do like merch or something on the YouTube store, it'll be like the thing from Adam's Family.
I have a chance of getting a significant bonus, but I've now put myself at higher risk as well. This kind of honeypot scheme applies across other industries as well and hints at the second thing I want to talk about. The original Jumptown was great because it was a singular location that attracted...
He's talking about the original Jumptown. So based. Oh, I'm loving this now.
CIG, seeing this popularity, wanted to capitalize on it, but they implemented more locations. This, in effect, diluted the effect of Jumptown and kneecapped its popularity. So what can we do instead? Rather than spreading players out, we know we need to concentrate them to limited locations. For cargo trading, this could take the form of a location having a blowout sale, thus offering steep margins on profit. For mining, this could be a comet that touches down, creating an area of concentrated high-value ores. And just in case Chris Roberts sees this, the players don't need to actually see the comet. CIG could make a small trailer and upload it on YouTube, but we don't need Comet Physics Tier 0 for this to happen. All they need to do is temporarily mark an area and boost the value of the ores in that area and telegraph it to players. This would attract all the miners in the system, and the better armed industrial team will be the ones to reap the benefits. In both these cargo and mining examples, this is going to concentrate these industrial players in one area. And then along.
And this is the problem, like we said at the beginning of the React. Everyone mines everywhere. There's no meta place to mine. So what he's doing is talking about making some game mechanics that focus the players into a location if they want to sign up for the risk and reward, but then creates, you know, player interaction, which is what we need from this game, man. An MMO needs player interaction of the good kind, meaning like security, linking up for benefits with friends, completing PvE content together, and of the bad kind, piracy, PvP, terrorism, all that jazz. It just needs convergence and player interaction like desperately, because that's what an MMO is. And right now we have this gigantic system with moons, planets, and open space and asteroids. Barely anyone runs into each other in a reasonable rate. Yeah, like for example, watching Summit play at Pickers for an hour with no bite is depressing. Yeah, it's not streamable, it's not playable for anyone with an amount of time. But if these routes were meta and there was some mechanics that shifted the community that was willing to go for risk and reward and wanted to seek player interaction, they just have to point us where to go. And there could be systems like this that would point people into those interactions.
One lane as they go to either sell or refine their wares when combined.
Number one issue, incentive. Number two, intel. Yeah, that's the problem.
What we've already talked about. So there's a number of overlapping effects. One,
tied in
you
exploration.
increase the likelihood that players run into each other, and this leads to a higher probability for PvP to occur. And this increased player interaction also serves as a way to cheat the feeling of a living universe. Right now it feels pretty empty, but there are still 100 players every time you log on. We're just so far apart that we don't run into each other all that often.
And back in the day when there was old Jumptown, it's worth knowing, even though the player limits to these servers was 50, the systems were very not fleshed out. Like ArcCorp didn't exist back then. Neither did... No, Hurston did, I think. Yeah, Hurston did. ArcCorp didn't. Microtech didn't. And a lot of these stations, the L1s and stuff like that, they didn't either.
Except at major landing ports. This all lays a foundation for when other key technologies are brought on.
Mez. Yeah, like some convergence points and gates and stuff that just did those lanes. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Online. Server meshing is still very necessary to increase player counts.
All that helps is in addiction,
but without ways to actually bring people together, will a server with 400 people feel just as lonely? Quanta is supposed to be the engine behind our dynamic economy, but it could still be a long way out. Can't we get some semblance of interaction before then, even if it means faking it to a degree?
Yes.
The things discussed here today are all things that CIG could do today to improve the experience of players across the board. In conclusion, CIG could start placing a lot more kinds of honeypots on rotation to push and pull players to different locations.
Yeah.
They could also adjust commodity limits and
But you know what a honeypot needs? Honey, aka incentive.
reputation to diversify cargo ships and concentrate traders along actual shipping lanes. Then they can also tie legitimate cargo missions to piracy counterparts. Most of these could be in-game tomorrow, unless there's some detail I'm not seeing here.
And I think the detail you're not seeing here is that UEC doesn't have that much worth to players right now. And that's the problem. And it comes to the economy. And where he's going, I love this video, by the way. But my only issue is people don't want the juice if it ain't worth the squeeze. A good example is like the price commodities. What he's referring to here is CIG putting some sort of gimmicky system to point you in a direction. The problem is even when they've done that in the past, it's not compelling enough. A good example, Jumptown is about to become an event, and it's going to happen, next week or the week after. People are not going to go to it because they don't care about money, mainly because of the exploit, but two, they don't care about the money anyways. Yeah, like, so even though the exploit's out, that's another 20%, 30, 40% of the players that won't bother with it. But even the players that do need the money or would like the money, are not that compelled to even need money in the first place. So the problem is the incentive is lacking from the economy. And this is why I make so many videos about the damn economy, man, because that is what is the key that is missing in this game. Yeah, is they don't have a in-game economy that is any meaningful, is worthwhile, or encouraging at all. And people just buy stuff with USD. Yeah, they sell everything with USD, weapons, armor, ships, stuff like that. And there's no reason or means to accumulate power in the game, because that's what everyone wants to do, right? You play a game, you want to become more powerful, you want to level up. There's no leveling up in Star Citizen. There's spending money on things you have and don't have, and that's it. Everyone's at the same level with that stuff. So accumulating power, all those things are important to the economy, but that's what's missing. A mechanic that he's describing is the price commodity alerts, but they never did well with it. I remember when the price commodity alerts mission came up, and for those who don't understand, there is a broadcast of a mission. It's called Price Commodity Alerts, where they tell you the list of price changes on commodities in the system. And the idea was it would give you the information on where's the most beneficial to go and trade. The problem is those prices never deviated enough. They never had unique spikes that happened in those price updates, and so the content never came of it. It was the most wasted potential of any mission I've ever seen, and I wish they would change it. Yeah, like it, because it has so much potential, but it's useless. But the problem is there's no why. There's no why to do this. No why for people to want UEC. You give people a reason to want UEC by taking things away, right? Like long term, you got to give them the ability to accumulate power. But the trick right now is to force people vegetables. Repair costs go up skyfold, yeah? Fuel costs up skyfold. Claim costs up skyfold. FPS kits up a lot. Not as much, but up a lot, right? Ship component insurance should be a cost, not something given to you for free. Stuff like this, yeah? If you have a hangar, you know, you go to save your location for medical respawns at Grimhex, great. That comes with a monthly fee of UEC, yeah? You have to buy a hangar at Grimhex. You have to buy a hangar at ArcCorp. You have to buy the ability to have that. Otherwise, every time you land, it comes with a cost. Yeah. Money sinks, money sinks, money sinks. What a cool video, man.
Any or all of these would have the overall effect of bringing people together and causing more interactions to occur.
Yep.
I think that this would be a net positive, but let me know what you think in the comments below.
Good.
Other than
Rip the
that,
alts.
like, share, and subscribe.
Cool video, man. Well done. Awesome, Oddjob. Awesome. I believe Oddjob reached out to me one day about using a snippet of one of my videos for his. Cool guy that when I briefly spoke to him. This video has been criminally less popular, and he's putting a gigantic amount in these videos. So I will link the video here. Can I do it? Can I do it? Is it working? Yeah, it is. Yeah. Check out his video. I'm going to put it in the comments and I'll put it in the video description on YouTube after. What a cool fucking video, man. Like, really well done. I'm going to DM Salty Mike telling me he has to react to this because this was just so good. This was really good. Points a finger on the problems, definitely. I don't know how I feel about, because this video was very much based off interdiction. I don't know if I have a lot invested in the interdiction. I have a lot invested in piracy, and I care about dampening as an interdiction mechanic, but do I care about the bubble, which is pulling people out of nav? Not so much, because I just don't think it's going to be possible unless they bend the entire game to it, which is like shipping lanes, gates, stuff like that. So maybe piracy is just destined to be 80% at the buy and sell stages rather than trying to get them along the highway stages, right? But you never know. Regardless, the player interaction's hurting, and he's right. It needs some attention along with the economy. With the snare, it needs much more love, especially as the Mantis is the only one there. Yep. Yep. And I think they're going to slowly walk away from the snare, Arcane. I think ultimately, like Shenanigans said earlier, we're going to have manual quantum jumping here soon. You know, like, how's that going to play into this? Does that reduce the frequency of interdiction even further? Don't know. Yeah, but I think that's a big one. I think they could try and trading things like Xeno threat with so many ships being damaged out in the Pyro Gateway should generate some demand for repair ingredients. Yeah, there's so many ways to legitimize the economy. It doesn't matter how they do it, only when they do it, and how soon, right? Like, that's it. But have an option to intercept in the quantum you long range scan and then do an arc jump on it, and then it just gets it off the lane. Yeah, there could be some gimmicky mechanic they do to make it easier, like you send out an interdiction device that intercepts them and then it pulls them out and holds them and then you go jump on them. There can be some sort of bridging mechanic. It doesn't just have to be you drop a bubble and then someone has to fly into it, right? That's hard.
Has gifted a sub to Mesbomb.
Yo, Arcane, appreciate it, dude. Thank you. God, that's the second one you've gifted. Appreciate it. But anyways, guys, good video, yeah? Make sure you hit up his stuff. Awesome. Again, comments and stuff. Really appreciative. And I will tell Mike he needs to watch this, but I'll catch you guys later.